Welcome to the You Are More podcast. I'm Blaine Ledbetter.
And I'm Laken Stewart. If you're looking for an authentic community that shares the truth of the gospel and the truth about life, you've come to the right place.
We believe that you are more. You're more than motherhood, more than your ministry, and more than your career. Grab a cup of coffee and listen in to hear the truth about what it means to find your identity in Christ through every season of life.
Welcome to the You Are More podcast.
Hey friends, welcome back to the You Are More podcast. We are so excited to be post-Thanksgiving and hopefully,
Belly's full.
yes, great time with your family and friends, wherever you celebrated, but hopefully you got lots of turkey and if that's your thing. But today we are going to finish out our FAQ, frequently asked questions about career. And so if you've been listening and you're like, well, motherhood, that's not my season of life right now, or you're thinking, well, I'm not in ministry. I don't work for the church. My husband's not in ministry. Well, hopefully this career episode will speak to you. We have asked questions on Instagram. Laken and I have thrown in some questions too. So, stick around and let's dive in on questions about careers and your job. So,
okay.
All right, I will kick it off. I'm going to throw it to Laken, but we'll probably both answer. So, Laken, thinking about careers and jobs, what, am I making enough money while also being a mother and holding a job, or is it too much to do both in this season of life with littles?
I have thought a lot about this actually in the last few months as we've been moving, and my husband's job changed, our income changed, and we used to live in a parsonage, and we didn't have to pay for housing, and now we're having to pay for housing. And so this specific thing has actually been on my mind a lot of just, I need to make money and I need to help provide for our family. But what does that look like when you have 2 children under the age of 3?
Right.
And balancing like the childcare piece, because childcare is expensive.
Yep.
It's so
all
expensive.
Over the country.
Everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. You're paying a lot for childcare, for good quality childcare. And so, I struggle with this because I, as an Enneagram 3, want to always take on more when it comes to work, and taking on more means more hours, which means more money. And so that is kind of my motivating piece whenever I'm like, okay, I can take on a new project. This means more money for my family. This means I can buy more cute outfits for my kids. But also I really have to dig deep and figure out my internal motivation for, why am I working? I have these 2 beautiful kids, 2 beautiful daughters, and my motivation is them and my mental health. So I am a person that I love my kids. I love spending time with them, but I am a person that also has to have an outlet and a way to help provide for my family. That is just ingrained in me, and that's just who I am as a person, my personality. And so being able to help provide for my family is, 1, a necessity just because of our circumstances, and 2, a great outlet for me to have something that is mine outside of my kids. And so I feel like this question, am I making enough money? I feel like there could always be more money made, but at what cost? And I think whenever I've taken on, a new project or a new side gig or a new this or that, I have to think, okay, this could be bringing in more money for my family, but what's the cost of that, long term? Am I taking time away from my kids that's already limited because of my work schedule or because of their childcare situation? Or am I solely doing this just to like make an extra buck? And so I think that is something that I have to think about a lot when I'm wanting to add something more to make more money for our family. So yeah, I it's all about the cost benefit analysis of the
Yeah,
situation and
absolutely.
really leaning into what is best for your family because your work situation, Blaine, is different than mine, is
Mm-hmm.
different
Yep.
than the next gal, and our child and childcare situation is also different. And so I know a lot of moms, working moms, play the comparison game of like, well, this mom works, this many hours a week and has kids and can pay for
Yeah.
childcare and all of these things. Well, like that's their optimal situation. You really have to
Yeah.
do like what is optimally best for your family, what the Lord is calling you to do, and how all of that syncs together. So all of that being
Yeah.
said, it's very subjective to the family, to the person. Um, you're probably never going to make enough money, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I've kind of come to terms with that of like, if you're in ministry and you have kids, like
Mm-hmm.
you're just never going to make enough and it's going to be fine.
No,
um,
we're not going to be featured on Preachers and Sneakers. Like
no,
that's we're
we
not
live by
gonna.
faith in this house. I mean,
Yeah. Same. Woo.
yeah. So Blaine, what about
Um.
you guys? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. It depends on our season of life, and it
Yeah.
changes, and we have to reevaluate every semester or season,
Yeah, we
literally
do the
like
same.
summer, spring, fall.
Hmm.
Um, there was a time in my life that I worked full time and made really good money in healthcare. But then when I was pregnant, I just knew, and I told them in my interview, I was like, I'll be full time for now, but I can't promise that when I have kids. And they were fine with
Yeah.
that. And so I did go part time. Thankfully, didn't have to pay for childcare. I mean, there is like, it was just crazy the way it worked out. My mom ended up keeping my firstborn the first
Mm.
year of his life, year or two. But yeah, it has changed with the seasons. And I knew that going part time would mean that we would not have as much money. So we just made sacrifices in other
Yeah.
areas. And that like there is a cost. And even leaving that job to come home and be with all of my kids all the time,
Mm.
even though we do have childcare and one is in full-time school, there's still a cost. Like
Yeah.
it, like you said, it's so subjective and it really depends on where you live, what your spouse does,
Mm.
or are you the only provider in your family,
Mm.
single mom. Um, it does depend. Like on one hand, if you're working full time and your kids are in full time care, that's gosh, the cost of daycare, like we've said, is
It's
so expensive. But
yeah.
at the same time, you have more money. And like for us, I have more time with my kids, but of
Mm.
course I'm not making what I have. And I work part-time. And so, we do have childcare a few days a week and it's really nice. I was just thinking the other day, I was like, I could probably um it's one of those things, it's like I could work more hours, but I would need more childcare, and so we would be breaking even,
And it
and
just doesn't make sense.
it doesn't. But I am like you, I enjoy working, and there are like probably 2 days out of the month I'm like, I wish I didn't have to work and I could just be totally here with my kids and,
Yeah.
no childcare. I would be it. But I do enjoy working and I enjoy being a person outside of just
Yeah.
keeping the home and the kids. And yeah, I really like the work that I do. I think it would be very different if I was miserable
Oh,
at
100%.
my
If
job,
I
for
was
sure.
miserable at my job, I probably wouldn't be working. But
Yeah.
our job, like I think we feel the same way. Our job is like literally like no other. And
No, it's not.
it's
It's not.
awesome the work we get to do from our couch.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So, moving next question, kind of along those same lines, like how do you personally balance motherhood, like balancing your career with motherhood and being present with your
Mm,
kids, whether they are, if you're working from home or not, what does that
yeah.
balance look like?
I think for us right now, we're really in a transitional season and trying to figure out our family
Yeah.
rhythms. Like, we've been in Illinois for 2 weeks now. Only a week and a half with our stuff though. So
Yeah.
it took 5 days to get our stuff. Um, so and this was our first like full week with like our normal schedule and what it would look like.
Yeah.
Cody's working schedule, our childcare schedule, my working schedule. And so honestly, it's kind of up in the air right now of like how it's all going to pan out. Um, and ideally, I can tell you what I would ideally like to see in our life in the next few months is trying to find that one-on-one time with each kid, even if it's like five
Yeah.
minutes a day. Like
Yeah.
if you can't spare 5 minutes to sit one-on-one with one of your
Hmm.
kids, you got to do some reevaluating.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's something that we've had to reevaluate. Like I was there, um, I was in a space of like, I don't even have time to sit and play with my almost 3-year-old, and that's got to change.
Yeah.
And so like sometimes balancing my career with motherhood includes like popping on a movie and sitting on the couch while they're watching the movie and I'm on my computer working. To
Hmm.
me, like I am
Yeah.
present, I'm showing them that I am getting stuff done, but at the same time that's not like quality time. It's like a passive
Right.
time with your
Right.
kids. And so I think it's balancing a lot of that with that intentional time with your kids and just trying to be um I don't know the word. Present is the word, but also like intentionality is key
Hmm.
here of just you know your kids better than anybody else and knowing what
Yeah.
they love and knowing, how they respond to things. Like our kids the past 2 weeks have been holy terrors. And so it's been truly probably the most difficult season of our parenting
Yeah.
in a very, very, very long time. And that's because their entire world has been rocked.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
we moved across the country to a new house that is way different than our other house.
Yeah.
And so like
It's a big change.
it's a big change. It's a big change for adults, and most adults don't know how to deal with emotions around that.
Yeah.
And
Can't
kids
imagine being a
definitely
kid.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so just really trying to find those rhythms. One thing we have been doing this week at least, kind of starting is
Hmm.
before we leave the house, we sit and read a chapter of like their little kids' Bible together.
Oh, I love
And
that.
that's been
That's
something
awesome.
that's been really sweet. It's Charlotte loves hearing the Bible story and loves talking
Yeah.
about it. And so um that's something that we really just love to do. So um yeah, what about you guys, Blaine? How do you stay?
Yeah. It's so funny that you just said that because I was listening to Sissy Goff on her Raising Boys and Girls podcast this morning at the gym, and
Hmm.
she was talking about the stages of life. And if you've not listened to that podcast and you're a parent, highly recommend it. It's so informative. It just talks about their development and what they're feeling, even if they can't name it. And so I feel very convicted about getting in the floor and playing with my girls.
Mm. Sometimes
Um,
that is so hard though. Like,
It is. I'm like, great if you love to do this. I don't enjoy doing that.
yeah,
I would much rather than be bored and figure out,
something
but
creative.
because I'm still there in the room with them. It's not like I'm like watching TV, I'm working or I'm doing some chores. But I do like that their creativity and their
Yeah.
imaginative play comes out. But I definitely, she was like, even just 10 minutes in the floor a day, because girls crave connection and relation and they
Mm.
want you to be there beside, them. And so if you work full time outside the home, 10 minutes, that's just a drop in the bucket for the day. So to come home and um, after supper, before baths, before the rush of bedtime, just like pulling a kid aside and saying, let's just spend 10 minutes
Mm.
together. Do you want to read? Do you want to For some of my kids, they're like, can you just lay down and watch TV with me? Like that's what they choose to do. And I'm
Mm.
not doing anything else except laying there with them. And so they're touching me and they have that like
Have that
that sense
connection.
filled. Yeah. So really I'm gonna try to incorporate more of the getting down on the floor, pausing to do that intentionally, but
Mm.
also because my husband works full time outside the home, we are very intentional about meals at the table. Um,
Mm.
if it's just me and the girls at home for lunch, we eat at the lunch table, like at the table for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And then at night, every single night, except Friday nights, because that's our fun movie night. Um, we, we are present and we talk through hard things, good things, fun things at the supper table,
Mm.
um, over the meal and just sharing a meal together. And so, um, balancing again back to the balancing your career with motherhood or parenthood or whatever season of life and being present, on the way to school, on the way to drop off, like not just giving them a phone to watch, but really talking through their day or if they do want to listen to music or listen to a podcast like that's reading for kids,
Yeah.
um, just asking them about that of like, well, what do you like to listen to? Or well, what did that
Mm.
story say? But just that I think we think that being present and being intentional with our kids is so like you have to have this schedule and this plan when really
Mm.
they don't expect anything except for
The
you to just,
spontaneity of it, yeah,
yeah,
is so
give them
important.
attention. We do. Andrew and I try to check in weekly with each other on how our kids are doing. So I took one of our kids to this thing called Lego Club in our
Oh,
library
fun.
Monday, and he and I sat there and did the Legos together. Like I had planned to work while he did that, but just to sit there in front of him and get to build Legos together, like I really hope that he felt loved. And that was something that really made us both
Mm.
pause and I felt like was very therapeutic.
Yeah.
And even coloring together and just stuff like that. Like we do try to, Andrew and I check in on the kids to say, all right, who's been acting out? Who who do we think needs some real one-on-one time? And so we'll go
Yeah.
ahead and schedule that. And so it doesn't happen every week with every kid, but like this coming week, will likely need to be probably one of the girls. Not necessarily toddler because she doesn't really care because she thinks she gets me all the time
Yeah.
one-on-one, and she does. Um, but taking them away from the rest of the family just to like do anything that they want and talk about anything that they want.
Yeah.
So
And
just
it's so important,
intentionality.
like at our job that we have, Blaine, it's not a work-life balance, it's a life work
Yep. Yep.
balance. And that's something that I really treasure within the job that we have of like
Yeah. Me too.
there have been multiple phone calls that I've been on with the owner of the company, and he's like, have you spent time with your kids today? Clock out and go
Mm-hmm.
play. Or like,
Yep.
clock out for the rest of the day and don't worry about this until tomorrow. Like, you don't hear that anywhere else. And so,
No.
finding a job that values your family over
Mm-hmm.
the work that you're doing is, I think, key to nailing the life work balance and really
Yeah.
nailing that, marriage between your career and your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your spouse, and
Yeah.
your relationship with friends. Like, no matter what season of life you're in, finding a job that values you and your family
Right.
above your performance is just
Right.
key. And that's hard to find. So,
It is.
um,
It's very
yeah.
fulfilling. Um, and it just puts me at ease knowing that like if there's something wrong or if I'm like, I want to go, on my kid's field trip, which I didn't last week and he had a field trip because he was like, you didn't go to my field trip last year, so don't worry about coming this year. I was like, what? He's just like, whatever. He
He's
does
just
not
like, you
care.
didn't come last year, it's fine. I
Whatever.
don't
You
need
don't care
you.
this year. Yeah, whatever. I know. I was like, whatever. So,
I love it.
well, switching gears because this is a little different, less about the motherhood, but what about, because I have this often, so just putting this out there,
Mm.
but imposter syndrome.
Oh
How do
man,
you cope
Blaine.
with imposter syndrome? Which, if you don't know, imposter syndrome is um whatever job that you do, you could be the most qualified person in the room, You could have all the skills. You could have been hired for that purpose, knowing that, your employer knows that you can do this thing. And still in the back of your head, you're like, I'm a fraud. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that weekly.
Oh,
Weekly.
me
I had
too.
thought it with every single
I'm
job. I'm
like,
like,
why are these organizations depending on me for their
I know.
marketing communications plan? I can't do
I
this. I suck.
Same. I'm like, I know. Then I have to like, cut off that feedback loop. I'm like, no, you do know what you're doing. Like you have done your research, you have done your due diligence.
Oh, I
Like
know.
even when I was in healthcare, I had gone to school. I had worked my butt off to get A's, B's, some C's.
C's that
Passed
get
this,
degrees, man.
they do. Amen. Passed this rigorous program, passed this intense, barely passed it, but I passed it, and that's all that matters. Um, Licensing exam, and still every day at that job felt like I had no idea what I was doing.
Hey, I think sometimes I feel that on a daily basis with the job I have now.
Hmm.
Mainly because I didn't go to school for the job that I have now. It's all been learned on the job.
Yeah,
And
which I
so,
think is incredible, and that is where I ended up getting the most knowledge
yeah,
at this job and in
no,
my last job.
yes, like if you would have told me 10 years ago I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I'd have been like, you're crazy. What you thinking?
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I never saw myself in the marketing world, never thought I would do that. Um, and now I'm in the sales world. I run
Hmm.
sales for our
Yeah.
company. And so I'm like, I feel imposter syndrome every time I get on a sales call. I'm like, these people are expecting me to pitch for our company. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what is going on? Um, I think I have to kind of combat imposter syndrome. I really have to think about like the season of life that I'm in and why God brought me there.
Hmm.
Um, and just remember that I am who I am because the Lord says who I am, not
Yeah.
what my anxiety or my brain thinks that I am or anybody else says that I am. And that's, I think, the number one way to combat imposter syndrome is just to remember who your creator is and who and what he created you for. Um, yeah.
Um, Something that you just said reminded me, I was looking up the verse as you were talking, but in
Mm,
Philippians where it says, what to think on,
mm,
Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So, like I said, closing that negative
mm,
feedback loop to
yes.
push back and say, no, I do know this. I have trained, I have learned, I have, made mistakes and learned from those mistakes.
Yeah.
So, if you have imposter syndrome, we're right there with you. But you know your job. If you didn't, you would have been fired a long time ago.
It's
Um,
true.
so just remember the things, and even talking it out with your superiors, just to say, like, I want you to know that there are times I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, because I've had that with one of our um team members above both of us. I've
Mm,
just said, like, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, and I didn't go to school for this. And she's like, and nobody expects you to. Like, what you're doing right now, and it was just a good reassurance of, like, we don't expect you to give us this big business plan and like these exact strategies. Like,
mm.
there's work to do and good work, and you're doing good work. And so I was like, thank you. So
Yeah,
just
and
that honesty.
giving yourself permission and hopefully your superiors, are giving you permission to like mess up because that's
Yeah.
going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes when we mess up, whether it be a small thing or a big thing, like we
Hmm.
feel the brunt of the pressure from the mess up,
Yeah.
and you have to give yourself permission to screw up because we're all going to screw up in our career, in
Oh
motherhood,
yeah.
with our
Oh yeah.
spouse or with our other family and friends. And so giving yourself permission to know, like, everyone makes mistakes. You're human. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to happen. And not letting that affect, you down the line.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So last
So,
one,
yeah.
and hopefully best one, if you are, if
Mhm.
you're thinking about a career change, how do you know when it's time to change jobs?
This question, I don't really know how to answer, mainly because all of my job changes have been location based slash
Oh,
circumstantial,
yeah. Okay.
not
Yeah.
like, gosh, this job is terrible. I need to get out.
Yeah.
But I can speak from about this from a ministry perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
husband's job, his career is ministry.
Yeah.
We have recently left a church that he was the lead pastor at to move across the country for him to be a young adults pastor at a much larger church. And we had to pray together and think through, like, what what does leaving and going somewhere else mean, and how do we know it's the right time? And I think
Yeah.
we have any big life transition, whether it be career or just a move in general, when we have sensed a change approaching, you know, for us, it's you have to feel a release from where you are and you need to feel a
Mm-hmm.
call to somewhere else.
To where
And
you're
so
going. Yeah.
those two things have to happen almost at the same time. And
Yeah.
sometimes you feel that release and you're waiting for a long time for the call. Or sometimes you feel a call and you're like waiting for a release.
Yeah.
And so at my husband's previous job, we felt a release for a very, very long time, but did not feel a
Yeah.
call until this past August. And so once we felt the call, we were like, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
And so we
Yeah.
were in that waiting period of like feeling a release for over a year, I think. And so that year was hard, but it grew us in all the right ways to be ready for the call to
Right.
somewhere
Right.
else. And so if you're in a job that you're like, man, I really just need to change something up in this, and you feel that release, just keep praying for the call. Like, the Lord is faithful and it will happen, because we prayed for over a year for a
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
And we're in some pretty dark seasons in our marriage and our life. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents about that.
Yeah. Well, the last two jobs that I've left, one, I wasn't trying to leave, but I got a call one day and it was one of my professors and she said, "Hey, I've got a friend that's looking for to hire somebody and I would love to recommend you." And I was like, it's worth a call. And ended up being a great move. I
Mm,
stayed there for 5 years, I think. Um, just almost 5 years to the day, and could not have imagined staying there that long, but also didn't think I'd ever work there. I thought,
mm,
no, that's not where I want to be. And so, but in that, I kind of got some experience for my next job, through the marketing aspect of it. I was more kind of marketing for the clinic a little bit, but when I knew that it was time to leave that job, I think now looking back, there was a lot of burnout.
mm,
And it's been 3 years since I've left, and there were a lot of other circumstances that led to me leaving at that time, but I felt released um probably 9 months before I felt called to go.
mm.
Um And I remember when I started this job, because they overlapped for a couple months, but Andrew was like, just pray about it. I was like, I have been praying about this for
For a
9 months
long time.
because
Yeah.
I have been released from this job, but just knew that it was not the right time to leave. And so when it was, there was like nothing but peace. And I know that there's also like probably this aspect or this side of you thinking like, I don't know if this is the right move. You just have to go in faith and confidence that, like, if it's not, you're always going to be in God's will. I
Yeah.
mean, like, it's not like you're ever out of his will. He is going to
Use
provide, and
whatever.
maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe he hasn't provided because there's something that still you have to learn, or again, the call to leave and go somewhere else, or maybe it's just that the person's position that you're about to fill, they haven't left it yet. They're about to.
Yep.
And so you don't know the things that God is preparing, you know. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hard thing to wait on, but when you know that it's like, I don't know why this is happening. Like, I've quit a lot of things this year, not a job, but um I'm like, I don't know why this is happening, but it's obviously preparing something, because he prepares a place for us. So
Yeah.
anyways, that's our anything else about
I
careers?
know.
I think,
I don't know. We were pretty long-winded today. This is a
yeah.
passionate topic for us. And are just thankful to be able to share, what we've learned over the
Hmm.
last, so many years of being moms and ministry wives and having the same job.
Yeah.
So we're glad you guys are tuning in. Make sure you share on Instagram at You Are More Pod and subscribe everywhere you can get your podcasts. So we're thankful for you guys. We'll see you soon.
See ya.